Hello again, everyone. Today we're going to take some more notes on eclipses. So you want to make sure you have your notebook out ready to go, and anytime you see bold and underlined words, that's what you want to write down in your notebook. Alright, so we're going to talk a little bit about eclipses. We do not have an eclipse every full or new moon because moon's orbit is at a 5-degree angle to the Earth's orbit. So it's not orbiting straight like this, it's going at an angle. So in order to have an eclipse, the sun, moon, and Earth all need to kind of line up perfectly, and that doesn't happen very often because of this kind of tilted orbit that the moon takes. And the Earth's orbit is a little bit tilted around the sun as well. Alright, when moon's shadow hits the Earth, or Earth's shadow hits the moon, there is an eclipse. An eclipse can occur when an object in space casts a shadow on another object by blocking sunlight. Make sure you write those down. Alright, so during a solar eclipse, the Earth can't see the sun. Alright, the moon is between the Earth and the sun. So during a solar eclipse, the order would be sun, moon, Earth. The moon's shadow hits the Earth and blocks out the sunlight. That's why we can't see it during that time. So this only happens during a new moon phase, which makes sense because the sun has to be behind the moon for this to happen. If the sun's behind the moon, then it's going to be the dark side, the shadow side that's facing us. That only happens during a new moon. Right, so when a solar eclipse occurs, it has to happen during a new moon, and it has to be happening at the exact right time that all three line up perfectly with one another. Alright, a total solar eclipse. That's when the moon's umbra, that's the darkest part of its shadow, hits the Earth. Right, it's a cone-shaped, darkest part of the shadow, is the umbra. And the moon blocks the light from the sun at this part. Alright, a total eclipse, you see the sun's corona. You want to write down this word, corona. This is the light that's kind of shining from outside of the edges of the moon that's blocking it. It makes kind of a circular light. And we call that the sun's corona. Make sure you write that word down. Right, a partial eclipse is if you're on the part of the Earth that's within the penumbra. That's this part of the shadow. Right, so you have the umbra, the darkest part of the shadow from the moon, and the penumbra, which is kind of it's still a shadow, but it's a little bit lighter. So if you're on the part of the Earth that gets hit by the penumbra, you're not going to see a total eclipse, you're going to see a partial eclipse. Alright, so make sure you write that down. Partial, Earth and Moon's penumbra. The penumbra tends to be larger, wider, but it's also less dark when it hits the Earth. So during a solar eclipse, more people will be within the partial solar eclipse area, the penumbra. Very few people will be inside the umbra and see the total solar eclipse. And this would be an example of a partial solar eclipse. So if you were in the penumbra, you might see something like this. Part of the sun is blocked out, not all of it. There's also something called an annular eclipse, and this can happen sometimes when the moon is in a position where it's not quite big enough to block out all of the light. So you end up seeing kind of a ring around it. So you want to write that one down too, annular. Moon is at a point where it is not big enough to block all the sunlight. An annular is a ring of sunlight that is visible around a dark moon. An annular solar eclipse, like I said, they do occur occasionally. And if you're within the shadow, you're going to be along the path of the annularity. So that means as the Earth is rotating, you'll see the eclipse only if you're within this path, this small area. there can be 2 to 4 eclipses a year, as many as 5. And the reason we don't see them that many times is in order to see them, you have to be what's called within the path of totality in order to see a total eclipse. So again, there's only a really small portion of the Earth that actually gets hit by the umbra to see the full shadow of the total eclipse. And then as the Earth is rotating, anyone within that path will see it. Okay, if you're not within that path, if you're close to it, you might see a partial, but you're not going to be able to see the total eclipse during that time. And a good example of that would be the eclipse that we just had in 2017 in August. If you were along the path of totality, so that kind of extends from kind of near Washington over to South Carolina in the U.S., you would have seen a total eclipse if you were in any of these states at that time. In Connecticut, we saw a partial, because we were outside of that area. All right, let's talk about lunar eclipses. This is when the Earth can't see the moon. Okay? And so the order here would be the sun, Earth in the middle, and then the moon on the end. All right, so Earth between the moon and the sun for a lunar eclipse. The moon is in Earth's shadow. Earth is blocking sunlight from hitting the moon. This happens during a full moon phase, right? Because now the sun is over here, and the lighted side of the moon is facing the Earth. So if it wasn't for the Earth's shadow blocking, this would be a full moon at this time. So lunar eclipses can only happen during full moons. Solar eclipses can only happen when the moon's in the middle during a new moon. So a lunar eclipse, to see a total lunar eclipse, the moon has to be entirely in the Earth's umbra, that darkest part of the shadow. And notice because the Earth is so much bigger than the moon, it's much easier to get within that umbra. It's much larger than the moon's umbra. Okay, so really everyone on this side of the dark side of the Earth at this point can see, because the moon's within the umbra, can see this eclipse happening. Right. For it to be a partial lunar eclipse, we do see those occasionally. The moon would have to be slightly, not completely in line, but slightly to the side within the penumbra. And that does happen occasionally. The moon will be close, but not perfectly in line with the sun and Earth. It'll be in the penumbra of the Earth, and everyone on this side would see a partial lunar eclipse. Penumbral, moon and Earth's penumbra. And this is part of the reason lunar eclipses are much more common for people to see than solar eclipses. More people can see them at a time. This entire dark side of the Earth is going to be seeing the eclipse happening all at once, rather than just a small path of people seeing it during a solar eclipse. All right. Totally eclipsed moons, they tend to look reddish, orange, and this is because the sunlight bends as it passes through Earth's atmosphere before it hits the moon. Last year you might have talked about this a little bit when you were talking about the atmosphere. That's part of the reason we see red at sunset or at sunrise. It's because of the way the light is being reflected and refracted in the sky. So you'll see during a total eclipse a reddish moon. Eclipse viewing. Anyone on the nighttime side of the Earth can see a lunar eclipse. Like I said, this is why you're more likely to see a lunar eclipse than a solar eclipse. You want to make sure you write that down. The last total solar eclipse seen here was in 1428, and the next will be in 2079. Connecticut saw total lunar eclipses in April and October of 2014, and April and September of 2015. This is just showing, this is a total, what a total eclipse would look like. Again, it's reddish because of the way the light is being kind of refracted and reflected around the Earth at this time. This would be if the moon was in the penumbral of the Earth's shadow, you would see a partial eclipse. Here's just some more examples of eclipses. Alright, so the last total eclipse was on September 28, 2015. The next total eclipse will be on January 31st, 2018, but we won't see it here in Connecticut. So the next total eclipse that we'll see will not be until January 21st, 2019. And there will be 2 penumbral eclipses in 2000, and there have been this is old. There will have been 2 penumbral eclipses in 2016. Penumbral meaning partial. Generally, there's 2 eclipses a year. Alright guys, this has been Eclipses. Go ahead and make sure you have all your notes taken. Have a great night.